This episode is brought to you by Meow Wolf. Come creative, leave creative. October is the Cosmic Howl at Meow Wolf Denver. Take our immersive experience and add a splash of strange enchantment with events, workshops, and other special surprises. Get your ghoul on with events like Adultiverse, where the wild things roam, only for the grownly on October 16th. Costumes are encouraged. Must be 21 or older. Learn more at meowwolf.com/cosmic-howl. That's meowwolf.com/cosmic-howl. Today on CityCast Denver. One of the Mile High's most popular social media accounts is in the middle of a massive scandal, with restaurants accusing him of ripping them off, other influencers claiming he's stealing their content, and investigative reporters looking into his allegedly shady business dealings. But the Denver Foodie has clapped back. Earlier this week, the man behind the account posted a video with his side of the story, featuring plenty of screenshots of text messages he claims clear his name and expose an even bigger scandal. 9 News reporter Jeremy Hohola has been reporting on the Denver Foodie situation, and he's on to break down what's really going on and respond to new allegations directed at him. Today is Thursday, October 10th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Jeremy Hohola, welcome back to CityCast Denver.
It is always a pleasure to be on this podcast. I love it. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So, do you remember the first time that you heard about the Denver Foodie?
Yeah. So I actually followed him on Instagram, and I've been following him for quite a long time. And I really never thought I'd ever do a story on this guy, ever.
Well, so I guess that, let's just jump into it. Why did you decide to start looking into the guy behind the Denver Foodie account a little bit deeper?
Yeah, so actually I got an email from a photographer here at 9 News on September 24th, and he knows a woman that does social media for minority-owned businesses. And he said, hey, you should talk to her. She's got this story about this guy that's gaining this reputation around town for taking money from small businesses and not either doing the work or not refunding them. So I was like, okay. It took me like 3 or 4 days to actually connect with her. In the meantime, I get tagged on Reddit. And it starts blowing up on social media. I was like, oh, this must be what she's talking about. So I call her up, and I don't want to say her name because I don't want to get her embroiled into this whole thing. I call her up, and she gives me details about what's happening. And when she mentions the Denver Foodie guy, initially I was like, who is this guy? And she's like, it's the What's Up Denver guy. I was like, oh, yeah. I was like, I know that guy. I know who he is. So she gives me details, and she's telling me that this guy is, going around town, taking money from small businesses, many of them minority-owned businesses, and either not showing up to do the promotional videos or just showing up and not doing them. And he's ghosting them. He's not responding to the businesses. He's just not doing any of the promised work. So very quickly, I was able to go online, and I was able to go on TikTok and, Instagram and TikTok and Reddit and see businesses posting their accounts about this guy, saying he did this to me. He came in, he said, the fee was $200, $350, and that we would get our video within a few days. And then boom, he just vanishes. That's a news story because you have a man who is well known in the city. He has a high profile account. Everybody knows who this guy is. And if he's out there collecting money from small businesses that are, a lot of them are minority owned, that's a story. And so I started calling businesses, and I was able to get 3 of them on camera to profile. And there are many more. I was able to get 3 of them on camera to give me their account. And when I met with them, I was able to have them open up their Instagram accounts, and they showed me their direct dealings with this guy. And you can see that there was just this effort on their end to reach out to him, but he essentially just would not respond. Or if he would respond, he'd give these stories that his kid was sick and he couldn't do it, or he said his team was doing a different process. So, eventually interview these businesses, reached out to him and put the story together and put it out there.
We're talking about an account, but like you said, there's a person behind this account, the Denver Foodie. Who is the man behind the Denver Foodie?
So his name is Jonathan Davis, and I never knew the name before until I looked him up. And the first thing I did is anytime I look into somebody's business, or if I look into somebody, I look at their fingerprint or their footprints in the court system. I do a background check on the criminal side, and I do a background check on the civil side. And, if this guy's facing allegations of taking money from businesses, he might have been sued in the past by smaller businesses, maybe in small claims court. I didn't see any of that. But what I did see when I, queried his name is that he's amid this really nasty lawsuit with this other social media company. And when I looked at that lawsuit, I was like, holy cow, this is a mess. This is a real nasty mess that this guy is in.
Is that the I'm from Denver account?
Yeah, and I followed them too, and I didn't really know who those guys were either. I followed them too for a while, and I was a little bit familiar with what they do. And so when I opened up the lawsuit, I saw that they filed a lawsuit against him in June, and they're accusing him of breaching a contract because he created the I'm from Denver page, and they bought it from him, and he created it, and it actually, did pretty well. And they're accusing him of using the Denver Foodie name as a violation of a non-compete clause in the contract. And so that's what the lawsuit is about. And when I looked at the lawsuit, this Jonathan Davis guy behind the Denver Foodie, he's not doing anything in the court docket at all to defend himself. There's no motions from any attorney that represents him. There's no response from him. And the judge is on the verge of giving the I from Denver people like an $85,000 judgment. That could happen any day now.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. Okay, so you talked to Jonathan Davis, right?
Yeah.
What was it like interviewing him?
So initially he was going to talk with me on camera, and we were going to meet in Lakewood somewhere. And then all of a sudden he decided he didn't want to talk on camera anymore, and he wanted to do something over the phone. So we came here to the studio, and I put it on speakerphone, and this was like a 24-minute conversation. And right away, I asked him just to give him a little bit of background about himself. And he spent a lot of time talking about how his social media presence has really exploded in Denver over the last several years, and how he has become this really known name in the city. He got invited to the Broncos events recently, he called himself big time, was really talking up about his big social media account. And then when I started asking him about the businesses and the allegations of these businesses coming forward, saying that he wasn't, doing the services as promised.
Yeah.
Do you feel any sympathy for these businesses?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I would, I could just imagine being in their shoes. I would be pissed off too. They have every right. They have every right to be pissed off. I'd take 100% full accountability.
He actually did admit, hey, I did bite off more than I could chew. And, I was in the middle of this divorce, and I got behind a lot of things over the last year, and I take 100% accountability. And I was like, wow, this guy's actually admitting that he's behind. And I was like, okay, all right, well, he actually admitted, and that's, as a reporter, that's what you can ask for, right? So we do a story where he admits that, and I start getting more correspondence from smaller businesses who say, this guy owes me money. And it starts getting into my inbox more and more and more. So right now, in the wake of my reporting, I have a list of approximately 20 businesses that have expressed a grievance against Jonathan Davis. One of the big questions that came up about his account, a lot of viewers pointed out that he's not marking his postings as branded content.
Which is a requirement of folks who are using Instagram and are promoting a business. If it's if they're getting paid to talk about a business or a brand, they're supposed to disclose that to their followers.
Yeah, and these are FTC regulations that I believe came out a few years ago because of the influencer marketing era that we're in. these rules came out to really kind of protect and inform the consumer. And that way people, when they're watching content, they know that the content that they're watching for is paid for, that it's a sponsorship. But when you look back at his feed, he is not disclosing any sort of paid for promotion, even when he finally posted the videos of some of the businesses that came forward. And it's clear that he did, receive payment from them. He's not disclosing that. So I would imagine, in the eyes of the FTC, that would be a violation of the disclosure regulations.
Sure. So something that you said that's interesting is in your interview with him, he talked about not delivering some of the things, like owning up to some of these issues, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He actually admitted that he got behind and that he fell short. And then he did say, and this is a bite I put on the news, he did say that now that this is becoming an issue, I will go back to my DMs and contact everybody, which tells me that he may not be very organized with his business dealings. And if he has to go back now that it's exploding online, that tells me he may not be very organized, which he seems to imply in his admissions.
Wow. And I do want to be clear, there's no requirement for influencers to be altruistic, right? It's just the matter of the fact is he did not mark his content as sponsored, and folks that maybe followed him felt like they were being served something less authentic, or I don't know. This is kind of where the influencer world can get really murky, right?
Yeah. And I listened to your podcast with the other, influencers.
Yeah, with the other influencers.
Yeah. And that was really great. And I found that whole world fascinating when you talk to them because they gave a really inside view on how things kind of are still evolving in that whole marketing world. It's wild.
This episode is brought to you by the Denver Film Festival. The Denver Film Festival is back from November 1st through the 10th, and it's your chance to experience some of the biggest films premiering in Denver before anywhere else. Obviously, a giant fountain Coca-Cola. Can't not do that. Popcorn. What am I talking about? Junior Mints. Hi. The best. It's the only place I eat. The only time I ever eat Junior Mints is at the movies. It's that's where they belong. You know what I mean? But here's the best part. It's not just about the blockbusters. The Denver Film Festival is your opportunity to discover hidden gems you might never get to see anywhere else. We're talking indie films, groundbreaking documentaries, and emerging directors. This festival is packed with unique stories that will stay with you long after the credits roll. So don't miss out. Head to denverfilm.org to grab your tickets and get ready to immerse yourself in 10 days of incredible cinema. That's denverfilm.org. We'll see you there.
Hi, this is David Plotz of CityCast. Have you thought about a gift for yourself this year? One that has the power to help you grow and learn and become a better version of yourself? Give yourself the gift of language by getting Babbel. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by language experts, Babbel gets you talking a new language in 3 weeks. Because talking is the key to really knowing a language. And that's how Babbel approaches it. It's designed for real conversation. So I have a trip to France planned with my girlfriend. Was it inspired by the Olympics? Yes, it was. And it's given me the chance to revive my old high school French. And it's so fun to catch back up with the vocabulary I'd forgotten. To remember all the food, for example. I'm in a lesson on ingredients, so I'm going to make crepes with butter and sugar. Avec sucre et de beurre salé, on va se régaler. We're going to have a feast. I learned this great new French expression too. J'en ai l'eau à la bouche. That means I have water in the mouth. It means it's mouth-watering. Love it. Love French. Anyway, Babbel gets you talking, and studies from Yale and Michigan State University and other leading universities prove that it works. So here is a special holiday deal for CityCast listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for CityCast listeners at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast, spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. October is the season for wearing masks and costumes, but some of us feel like we wear a mask and hide more often than we want to, at work, in social settings, and around our family. Therapy can help you learn to accept all parts of yourself so you can take the mask off, because Halloween masks should be part of a fun costume, not your daily life. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Take off the mask with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/citycast to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/citycast. So let's get to his response, because he responded to your reporting in a video that he posted earlier this week on his Denver Foodie account. And he claims that you ignored information he gave you about this lawsuit he's in that you mentioned with the I'm From Denver guys, and that you only started looking into him after his former business partners hired a PR agency to run a smear campaign. So I want to play a clip for you from that video, and then I'd love for you to respond to what he says.
Sure. Absolutely.
And you could see the text thread here. I'm kind of explaining everything to him. I try to tell him about my email being hacked and my website being taken over. He did not care. He did not listen. And then I seen the news report come out. He completely ignored all of the facts, all of the receipts that I showed him. And I was really upset. I texted him and called him a piece of shit. I asked him why he withheld the truth and didn't show none of the proof that I gave him. And you know what he told me? I'm not here to be your PR agency. He had one agenda and one agenda only, and that was to paint me out to be a fraud. He was not interested in the truth.
Jeremy, what do you think about that? He's saying that you had an intent to harm his business by doing the reporting that you were doing.
My intent was to advocate for the small businesses that feel that they've been scammed by this guy. And I told him that over text messaging. And I did tell him, I'm not your PR agency. I'm not here to allow you to try to explain yourself into this hole where this story is about small minority businesses that you owe money to. They're the victims. You're not the victim. They're the victims. And I'm here to report on their behalf and put it out there. What he's doing is he's taking in that video that he made, he's taking points from a linear timeline of events, and he's creating this constellation of a conspiracy, if you will. And he's putting himself in the middle of that conspiracy as a victim. Meanwhile, while he's doing this, people are posting in the comments under those very videos that he's posting. They're businesses that are coming forward saying, hey, you still owe me money. Stop lying. In fact, 2 businesses yesterday came forward under that very video that he posted saying, hey, you owe me money. And that was a burger shop in Estes Park. And the second business that came forward was a vape shop here in Denver. And so, in the comments section of his own videos, it's quite apparent there's evidence there that these businesses are not happy with this guy. So after he made that claim, I did get a flurry of angry messages from his followers accusing me of being in cahoots with the I'm from Denver people, which is not the case at all. I had no idea who they were until I found the lawsuit, recently. So,
well, do you worry at all that you may have left out some of that important context about this lawsuit he's facing?
No, I put it in our web article. See, the thing is, I'm very limited on what I can do on broadcast. And then if you look in the web article that I wrote, it's, we gave him space, and I actually put more quotes from him where he did say that he felt that he was deceived by a contract that he signed with the I'm From Denver people. And so there's some quotes in there on that. But I think, from the time I'm given on air and in our online reporting, I think I was more than fair to him. I gave him his piece. He went on air, admitted that he's falling behind on business, and we just put it out there. So I like to let my reporting speak for itself.
Yeah, and I just have to say the comments part is really interesting to me because I've watched comments I've left asking questions, just like separate of this situation with the Denver Foodie. I've asked questions and they've been deleted. I don't know. Sometimes there just feels like there's a lot of information out there that's like,
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time.
Yeah, and it's, the lawsuit, I mean, when you read through the lawsuit, it's very dense. You could do a whole hour documentary just on this whole drama, right? And I've got 3 minutes on air, and I've got, a few hundred words I can put in an article. And I think, based on my reporting, I feel very confident we did our jobs to the best that we could with what we did by giving a voice to the businesses and also letting Jonathan Davis have his say on air.
So I think this world of influencing, like we were talking about, is really interesting. And like you said, it's evolving. And I think the two influencers we talked to last week also shared that it's kind of the Wild West at this point. There's not necessarily, it's not, the rules and regulations around it are not keeping up with the actual business of influencing. But, some of these allegations from these restaurants are over like $250. It's not a huge amount. It's not a big amount of money per video. And he's really not posting that many videos. So I don't know. What is your sense of the big money here? What's the money side of this?
I think it's more than money. I think it's the principle of the matter.
Okay.
I think people expect other people to be honest, especially when someone has such a prominent following. They expect them to, use that power and that influence responsibly and to be honest. And I think there's more than money here. This is more about principle, being fair, being ethical, being transparent, and owning up to your mistakes when mistakes happen. And the way he's responding is really interesting, in the wake of all of this. So I think that's the story here. Yeah, $200, $300 may not sound like much, but when you talk to these small businesses, they are struggling out there. And they are just trying to survive. And this is the new way for them to get eyeballs on their business, right? They can't afford a legacy media advertising campaign. They don't have the money for that. And this is the way for them. This is like the new way, right? I mean, back in the day, businesses used to put out flyers, and put out flyers in the mail or post flyers on telephone poles. This is the digital way of doing that. And they want it to be a fair process. But, when you have somebody out there that does, appear to be taking money and not doing services, that's a news story.
And that's a fair point, too, that like legacy media, like you're saying, like, 9 News or CityCast Denver, you can't get an advertisement on either of our platforms for $200. So
No.
I can see where it's an affordable option both for the business and for these smaller influencers who are also essentially running their own businesses.
Yes.
So one of the restaurateurs you interviewed talked about giving this gentleman, the Denver Foodie, $200 and never getting anything in return. And you quoted them saying, how do you do that to somebody when you have so many followers? They trust you. So, I mean, that's kind of the question is like, how does this happen? Did he just like not deliver?
I don't, I want to be careful about, projecting my opinions on him. I think I just let what I reported speak for itself. You have a man who has a large following, who is actively engaging with small businesses, actively taking money from them, and either not showing up to do the work or showing up and not doing as promised. And that's clearly what's happening here. And again, I have a list of about 20 businesses that have expressed a grievance against him. And that list is growing nearly every day. The more I monitor what's going on online and the more I reach out to them, and I'm talking to these businesses. And they're miffed. They're upset. I mean, it's not a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, it's more than about money.
Sure. Well, and that's kind of like thinking about, too, the stakes of this story on the other side of it. Like, I've heard from people who follow accounts like this, and like, this is how they find out about places to eat. Like you said, you were following this before you knew anything about it. It was like, oh, this is someone that highlights Denver businesses. I'm going to follow them. But so in this whole process, we've noticed at least that he's lost about 4,000 followers, but he still has over 200,000 people following him. And so it's like, what do you take away about this whole situation? Like, does social media matter to Denverites right now when it comes to things like how we learn about what's going on in our city?
Absolutely. I think that's why in our place as a television news station, we are trying to stay relevant amid a changing way of consuming news. And let's face the facts here. More people these days are getting their news on TikTok, on Instagram, and on Facebook through their feeds than they are sitting down watching the news. That's just the new reality. And we have to, move into those spaces. And I think when you have influencers that have a large, substantial following, there's no training for them on how to behave ethically. There's no guidelines that they're given when they open up their Instagram account saying you have to do this, you have to do this, or you should be doing this, you should be doing that. And that's where consumers are these days. And I think people like it because there's an authenticity, right? From influencers. You don't have the stoic news reporter wearing a suit on Instagram. I mean, you do, but I mean, you have someone that is authentic, who's real, who's out there speaking from their heart about community issues. And I think that's why it's an attractive place to be, as a content creator and as someone who's consuming community news.
And I also can see that being the reason that folks want to trust that person,
Yes.
I trust this account to tell me, about restaurants in Denver, but I also expect them to be transparent about the business side of things, I guess. And so, but you're right, there's no rules. So I think we're just going to keep following this story to see what happens next.
Yeah. And I anticipate doing a follow-up. And, and I will say this, the focus of my story is not necessarily the drama between him and the other social media account, I'm from Denver. While that's an interesting kind of sidebar to the story here is about businesses who trusted a man, they gave him money, and he didn't follow through with that end of the bargain. And that's my focus of the story. He wants me to, give his whole side about the lawsuit, the drama surrounding his lawsuit. His domains were taken over by those guys, apparently. And I don't know the whole ins and outs of that, but that's not the story. The story is not about him being a victim. The story is about the real victims, and these are the small businesses.
Well, we'll be continuing to follow this story as well. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining me.
Happy to be here, as always.
We're going to put links to Jeremy's report and the Denver Foodie's response in the show notes. And just so you know, we have reached out to the Denver Foodie himself several times for an interview, and he has not accepted our invitation. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell your favorite influencer about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye-bye. Self-reflect on this, Olivia. Just kidding.